Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 61 of Humanity versus Insanity, the Crane Report. Now, we have a very interesting and somewhat disturbing program this evening. But before we get on to the core content, for a number of weeks before the end of last year, I was talking about a forthcoming event in the US. And I was talking about AV America, the very first alternative view event in the United States. And I'm pleased to say that the website for the event is now live, and the web address is avamerica.org. And so all the information on that website. The event will be in downtown Portland. So easy access from just across the border, and certainly for residents of Vancouver. So hopefully it will be a truly multinational audience. So who have we got speaking? Well, I am delighted to announce that we welcome back Cynthia McKinney. Well, when I say welcome back to the first event in the US, that sounds a bit strange. But Cynthia McKinney actually spoke at the Alternative View 3 in the UK in late 2009. This truly remarkable former congresswoman who famously took on Donald Rumsfeld over the missing $2.3 trillion from the Pentagon budget. And on a day when only Donald Rumsfeld could have known that it was pretty damn good to bury bad news, that was announced on September the 10th, 2001. How could Donald Rumsfeld ever have known that the following day an event would occur which would completely wipe all reference to the missing $2.3 trillion from the media? So Cynthia McKinney, joined by Dave Dees, and this will be Dave Dees' first conference appearance. Dave is well known for his truly remarkable artwork. And this is an opportunity for Dave to share his story, of course, how he's been effectively trying to avoid the establishment, trying to settle in the outback of Sweden before being evicted from the country, and now finding himself back in the USA. Of his actual whereabouts, I have no idea, but he will be in Portland for this event. We also have Phil McConnell, Max Egan, Patrick Henningsen, Thomas Sheridan, his first appearance in the United States, and an opportunity to get some insight into Thomas's work on the sociopaths amongst the ruling parasites and how to deal with them. And Vera Scroggins, who's well known to regular viewers of Fracking Nightmare. Of course, Vera is a remarkable lady, a grandmother, who has been campaigning against the unconventional gas industry in Pennsylvania. Has managed to get herself a court injunction preventing her from going within 400 meters of any of the well sites in Pennsylvania. And Zen Gardner, and I think this is Zen's first public presentation in the US. Of course, he made his conference debut at AV6 in the UK last May, and what a debut. Zen, one of the truly outstanding philosophers of the 21st century. Of course, my slip of the tongue there was Zen and my good friend Ken O'Keefe. And, I'd love to have Ken O'Keefe at the event, but we're not sure that he'd actually get in the country. Of course, he was due to speak at an event in Australia just before Christmas, but he had to spend a couple of weeks in Bali whilst waiting for the Australian government to finally decide that they weren't going to let him in. And the concern is, of course, that the US may also feel the same way. Anyway, that's a great lineup, I think. So I'm really looking forward to being in Portland in April. And if you want more information, please go to the website. That's avamerica, Alpha Victor America.org. Right, on with tonight's show. And, of course, one of the great British dishes for a country that's not renowned for its cuisine is bangers and chips. Well, tonight's conversation with my very good friend and amazing researcher and campaigner, Pippa King, is going to be looking at the absurd relationship between Richmond's sausages and chips of a different nature. Take a look at this.
Oh, he likes that.
Emily met Teddy at 9 months old. Since then, they've been inseparable.
Emily?
He's not just a cuddly toy, he's part of the family.
Come on, Emily.
Teddy's lost in the 2 words I have nightmares about. Nightmares.
We all love Teddy. Oh, stupid.
Teddy! Oh, where's my Teddy? Oh, is that heart-wrenching or gut-wrenching? Well, my guest tonight, Pippa King, of course, has been on this trail for best part of a decade. So, Pippa, welcome back to Humanity versus Insanity.
Good evening. Thank you for having me on.
An absolute pleasure. And I hope you've got your Teddy in a very, very safe place.
It's well, you actually got in touch with me and highlighted this story to me. I just sort of missed it over the Christmas period. I was sort of slightly speechless when I watched the advert because it's a problem to a solution to a problem that just doesn't exist at all. I can say, as being a parent of 2 children, I've never had a conversation with another parent where this has been an issue, let alone at tea time. I don't know any children that have been that attached to toys. I accept that children do get very attached to toys, and there are some children who have toys that are very special to them, but it's certainly not something I've had experience of, and it's not something I can say that my friends of my children and their mothers have had experience of either. So just sort of wondering how successful the campaign's been over the Christmas period, really.
Well, let's just have a look at this. I mean, first of all, this is the display in the shop. Richmond Sausages win toy tracking chips. Now, there's some 200,000 apparently on offer here. So on the basis that they got 200,000 to shift, I guess the competition to win them isn't going to be that difficult. In fact, they're probably going to struggle to get that many entries. But here's the question. I mean, Richmond Sausages and tracking chips, how did this relationship ever come about?
I have to say, I've not actually found a direct link other than the fact that Richmond Sausages have said that it's a company called Amigo Partnerships UK Limited that are supplying the chip. How the conversation went in the boardroom about what should we do for this Christmas's advertising campaign quite went, I don't know, because the chip market, there is a market for these chips, so you can get them off Amazon at the moment. They're known as tiles, and they're selling for about £28 to £30 a piece, and you can use them. For example, I've got a friend who chooses to tag an errant cat with a tile so she can see where the cat is via her phone. But it's not a market that's it hasn't taken off. There's not a lot of people using them. It's not a sort of emerging market as much as probably the industry wants it to be. Hence, possibly why they've targeted extremely young children with the idea that it's okay to use technology in this sort of way, and also to introduce it and give it away for families to sort of use.
So the question is which direction is pushing this now? So is it likely that this is Richmond's Sausages taking the initiative, or has a tracking device manufacturer, Amigo in this case, taken the initiative and looked for a partner company that's got a sort of wide audience. I mean, obviously, you know, what's got the widest audience is probably going to be a food product. You know, and we're going to, I'm sure, find out in the coming weeks, you know, who was touting what. You know, did they tout this around other companies before they found somebody at Richmond who said, oh, you know, this is a good idea. It might help us, you know, with our marketing campaign. And here we are, inadvertently, you know, giving Richmond's undue publicity. I mean, my attitude to this is, if ever I was tempted to buy Richmond Sausages, I definitely will not be buying them from now on. I mean, you know, for me, this is, you know, a classic case of an opportunity of people to vote with their wallet and make it very clear that this is an agenda that we don't subscribe to, and you know, boycott Richmond's Sausages.
Well, it's interesting. I sort of had a look into the product. I do get feeds through to my email on RFID and the industry and what the chatter is. And there's a journal called the RFID Journal. And if there's any innovative new products on the market or ways to market them, they tend to sort of report on it. And I hadn't seen anything about this. I wasn't familiar with the company Amigo. But it did turn out the company Amigo is a Chinese company, effectively, and China is very much into the smart grid and sort of the Internet of Things. That's where the emerging market is. We haven't quite caught on with these things in Europe yet. And this particular watch, the Amigo, had a watch, a child tracking watch, essentially. So if you want to put on, can you put slide 5 on? That shows the watch.
There we go. There we go. There it is.
And but it has a built-in microphone allowing parents to listen to their children. It also has a pedometer, so parents can see how active the child is, and they can send them encouraging messages like "run faster" or "run over here," you know. But isn't that the sort of thing you would do anyway if you were sat on a park bench watching each other? You shouldn't need to tag children like this. But this is the company, or a part of the company that is supplying Richmond Sausages with the tracking chips.
So run this past me again. This watch has a microphone, which I'm assuming is either permanently on or can be remotely activated, so that the parents can actually listen in to whatever it is the kids are discussing.
According to Wired magazine, yes, that photograph came from the Wired magazine, and that was the caption that was by the side of it. The particular company that is manufacturing the chips for Amigo is a company operating out of Shenzhen, I think, in China, and they actually advertise it. If you put on slide 7, they are using, this is the company that's manufacturing the chips for Richmond Sausages. So one of the products that they sell is a child and pet tracking chip, and this actually has sound control. If you look at point 3, which is just right at the bottom of that photograph, it does have some sound control at the bottom, so you can actually again listen in. Yeah,
it says sound control dialing, use mobile phones or whatever, or maybe.
So it's. I don't know if this is the particular chip that Richmond is getting, but they're certainly buying it from this company who's manufacturing it, and that is a product they manufacture.
Well, they're buying it, or somebody is buying it for them and simply using, you know, Richmond as an outlet. I mean, because obviously this looks like it's more social programming in terms of, you know, who it's aimed at. It's aimed at the, obviously, I mean, who has teddies? Primarily preschoolers. So
absolutely,
it's getting preschoolers accustomed to tracking devices.
Definitely, because as I say, the RFID towel market doesn't seem to have taken off madly here in Europe and the Western world. So you know, it just seems very bizarre that a sausage manufacturer is giving away free chips. I mean, they've spent £3 million on an advertising campaign from Saatchi and Saatchi. Their first advert for this went out at the end of November during an X Factor, high audience volume there for that, and it's you know, if these tiles are selling on Amazon, these same type of tracking chips selling on Amazon at £30, say for example we shaved 66% off that at the end, that was profit. At cost there'd be £10. Now if Richmond have got 200,000 of these at £10 a pop, that's £2 million worth of investment into a product that has no track record whatsoever of selling even to this demographic of age group or to the family. It seems an awful lot of money to be testing a brand new innovative advertising campaign but aimed at children, basically.
Well, but look, this is beginning to look to me like, call me, cynic, but a lot of parents, instead of putting the tracking chip around Teddy, and of course, I mean, the reality is that if the tracking chip is around Teddy and the youngster is carrying Teddy around, then clearly the parents are effectively tracking the child. But there again, at that age, the child shouldn't be out of their sight. Perhaps David Cameron needs a few, because I think he has a track record of leaving his kids in pubs. Maybe he needs them more than the rest of the population, who tend to be a little bit more conscientious towards their parenting responsibilities. But I can see here a little bit of mission creep, and that is that instead of the chip being hung around the neck of Teddy, it gets hung around the neck of little Johnny or little Janie. But we have another issue here. I mean, is there any information that you've found so far on the technical specification? I mean, has anybody done any testing on, the spurious emissions? Because, when we were speaking before on an earlier edition of Humanity versus Insanity, we were talking about the RFID chips that were being used in the trial at the school in Chester. And those active RFID chips were going to be worn on lanyards right around their necks, and effectively it was going to be right over the heart chakra. And that was generally in children who were in secondary school. Here, and we know that EMF, electromagnetic fields, have a much greater detrimental impact on the developing body than they do on, say, the established body of the adult. And here, what we're looking at is the prospect of these untried, untested RFID devices literally being on preschoolers.
Yeah, I mean, it's a GPS tracker using Bluetooth to communicate with a mobile device. So Bluetooth is operating, I think, about 2.4 gigahertz, and the GPS is operating anywhere between 900 and 1800 megahertz. So, and I haven't found any spec as to how often this thing's sending out a signal, but I guess it's pretty frequently, and it's 24/7. So if a child is holding a teddy, you would presume it sort of holds it close to itself, or or probably holding it in a hand. But when it goes to bed as well, this frequency is going to be emitted around the child. And yes, you're right. There's something called the SAR. It's a specific absorption rating that they do for human beings, and adults' SAR, the rate at which it absorbs radio frequency, is far less than the penetration of radio frequency into a child's body. So, say for example, it might, in an adult's body, a radio frequency signal might only go in a couple of centimetres, but on a child's body it might go in 4 or 5 centimetres. And that is because children have a higher proportion of water in their bodies than adults do. So the radio frequency, electromagnetic frequency, can get further into the body. So yes, you're absolutely right, and I don't think there has been any testing done on it. So and that's a whole other, health topic of radio frequencies and what they can do. But going back to the sort of psychological aspect of this, you've got very young children thinking it's okay to tag things that are precious to them. So you can imagine the conversation going something like, "Well, Mummy, you tag my teddy, and I love my teddy, and we all love Teddy because you've just only been crying about it on that advert. Why don't you tag me? Do you not love me?" And that deep psychological sort of, it's okay to tag things that you love because that's how we operate in society. If the child sees at 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 that's what parents do to things that they love, and that's what we should do to things that we love, then I think that's quite a deep psychological message that that child's getting, very sort of subconsciously. And the other thing as well is, if you go to the Richmond YouTube channel, if you just type in Richmond Sausages on YouTube, you'll find it. They've got, I think, 3 videos on there. And one of the videos, the father, and they're all about the tracking chip, when the father says, well, our little girl hides the teddy to get attention, and so we have to find it. And now we've got this tracking chip, of course, that's not going to be an issue. But if the girl's using her teddy as a device to push her parents' buttons because she wants attention, then I would suggest they've got a bigger problem than a tracking chip will solve. You know, there's quite a few. And also, as well, sort of going back to the advert, I don't know if you noticed, but right at the end of the advert, you had the family sitting down on the table, teddy top of the table in a high chair, with the family all eating on the side of the table. Sort of, you know, and he's pride of place with his RFID chip. It's just, there's many angles you can come at this on from a psychological level, but it's I found it distasteful, and I think that I haven't been able to prove it, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if there was some sort of government or industry hand in this, because the Amigo company is very immature. The Amigo Partnerships UK Limited got set up in December 2014, so it's only not even 13 months old. The Amigo Watch website was set up in February 2015. So these companies have got no track record of selling the product, supplying the product, whether the product's good or not. It's the whole thing is just they've spent an awful lot of money on something that isn't a proven product or a proven market via the sale of sausages at Christmas.
Well, I must confess that you know, I'd certainly be very, very concerned without any you know, technical analysis as to you know, the safety element of this, because of the potential, you know, spurious. I mean, obviously it may be a relatively weak signal, but it's in immediate proximity to the child. And you know, this is a picture that you sent through to me, and I mean, this is incredibly disturbing, because you know, here we've got a baby grow, you know, whatever manufacturer, but or the website is MimoBaby, mimobaby.com, and here we've got a tracking device, you know, right over the left-hand abdominal region here, and you know, we're not going to know for 30 years or so, but call it a hunch. But I would say that there's a very good prospect that there will be a link in the cancer rates between those children who wore mimigros with these tracking chips in. And of course, yeah, I mean, that would be just dismissed right now as, oh, that's just you know, rampant conspiracy. And conveniently, of course, in 40 years' time, or even less, people will have forgotten or not even known that they were wearing these devices, and there will be no apparent link. But I mean, you know, once again, this relies on parental ignorance, or innocence, I should say, rather than ignorance. But you know, the reality is that few parents will probably do their research, and the vast majority will say, oh, you know, but if Richmond Sausages are promoting this, it must be a good idea.
No, that's right. I mean, the second photograph that you showed of the sausages on the shelf was actually at a local shop near me, and I decided to go. So what you have to do is there's a promotion code on the side of the packet, and you have to go to the Richmond website, type in the promotion code, and see if you've won. I presumed with them having 200,000 of these that
everyone's a winner.
Actually get one. Everybody's a winner. But you know, I didn't get one, and if I'd have won one, I would have got one and seen if I could have got it analysed to see exactly what it is. Using and the technology inside it, because if this Chinese company can make devices where you can listen in on your children, I mean, I guess this probably hasn't, but we just don't know what it is that they're being sold. And like I say, it's the you know, electromagnetic frequency coming off it. You don't know how strong it is, and what possible damage it can be doing. Like I say, we won't know for another 30 years. And I think another aspect of this is, when the child has no use for the tracking chip anymore, or the family has no use for it, what do they do with it? Well, they start to use it then for other applications. The industry have got that chip in the home. That's the big thing for them. If you've got a brand new product that nobody has ever used before and the public isn't used to using, how do you sell them the concept that they need it. They've been trying to do this for the past few years, at least maybe 2 or 3 years with the tile, and people just haven't taken it up. So one way to get this technology into the home is to give it away. Give it away to young families, not older people because they're probably not as technical minded, but young families with young children. So yes, it could be that the parents then use it to tag their school bag or tag a bike or tag a pet. But the problem with these tags is, and I'm going to go straight from A to Z at this point. The problem with these tags is it only tells you where the tagged item is. Like if you've got a teddy bear, it'll tell you where the teddy bear is. And if you think that that teddy is with the child, this is much the issue with the RFID chips in West Cheshire College. All the tracking system does is tell you where the tag is. So, for example, in a school, if you're using RFID tracking systems to track children and a child wants to play truant and gives its tag to somebody else, the school is under a false sense of security in thinking that that child's in school when actually it's not. It's somewhere else. The tag's in school. So what they've done in Brazil...
I have the solution for that. Let's implant the chips.
Well, this is going to say they've gone one stage further in Brazil is in the school logo on the T-shirts, they've actually got the devices in there.
So once again, it's right over the heart.
Yep. And yes, like you say, the sort of solution to that problem is if you're going to lose the chips, then you put them in a place where you're not going to lose them, and that's under your skin, essentially. But it's getting young children used to this technology. There's a company in the United States called IOTA, IOTA. And they have a YouTube channel, and they sell these chips, and they make no bones about it that you can use it to tag your children. And you see about 30-40 seconds into one of their adverts, a mother putting a chip into the bag of a small child, essentially, sort of maybe about 5 or 6 years old, wandering off down the street, which is fine. I think children should be able to wander by themselves, and it gives them a sense of responsibility. But this next generation, especially starting with babies and young children have no concept of privacy, and they trust what their parents do, that my generation, the adults that we have around now are probably, and even we get tracked with our mobile phones, are probably the last part of society for a long time to come. I hope I'm wrong, but that have any sense of what privacy is and what being monitored is. Because if you go back to the Mimo Baby Grow, they also have sheets that you can put in cots with the same sort of device on them. So as a parent, you can get a report every day of how the baby's slept, how it's moved, what the body temperature is, what the temperature of the room is, and you can control all these factors from your mobile phone. But I think one thing that this technology really does threaten is our humanity, because as parents, we should be aware of how the baby is sleeping, what temperature the room is. We shouldn't leave it to technology to tell us this. Also, as well, Mimo have got a webcam monitoring system. Basically, it's a television constantly peering at the baby in the cot. And again, right from a young age, the next generation is being accustomed to the fact that it's okay to be surveilled like this. And actually, I don't think it is. I choose not to live in a society where that's the case. And I think it takes a lot away from parenting and relying on your instincts to parent rather than technology.
Absolutely. Well, look, Pippa, what I want to do now is I just want to play that ad one more time so that we're sort of looking at it, through, if you like, more insightful eyes. And then once we play the ad, I want to change the subject just a little bit and, talk about your progress in raising these issues, these surveillance issues in Parliament. So here's the Richmond Sausage and Chips ad one more time.
Oh, he likes that.
Emily met Teddy at 9 months old. Since then, they've been inseparable.
Emily?
He's not just a cuddly toy, he's part of the family.
Come on, Emily.
Teddy's lost in the 2 words. I have nightmares about. Nightmares.
We all love Teddy. Oh, stupid.
So if any viewers of Humanity vs Insanity, if you do have a propensity to purchase Richmond Sausages, then maybe you could actually apply for a chip. And there's a couple of things that you can do with it. One, of course, is to send one to Pippa so that she can get them properly analysed. The other thing is to stamp on it and destroy it and make sure that it never sees the light of day. You know, this, I know there are many that would call me a Luddite, and certainly compared to Kurzweil, then I certainly am. I mean, that guy must be the most outrageous fantasist of transhumanism that one could ever dream up. And of course, as director of engineering with Google now, he has unlimited funds to pursue his agenda of putting human consciousness into the mainframe. But of course, that's a whole new discussion. But he absolutely believes that he will be able to achieve that by around about the year 2030 or 2040. Which brings us into sort of obviously the whole area of what is consciousness, and do we really want our consciousness to be trapped here? You know, just as Eric Blair, George Orwell, wrote 2 seminal books, Animal Farm and 1984. One, of course, was a warning about the risks of a left-wing totalitarian state, and the other a warning about a right-wing totalitarian state. And perhaps the recent film, the Johnny Depp film, Transcendence, was a warning about what may occur if Kurzweil actually is able to fulfill his fantasy. So, Pippa, are you still there?
Yep, I'm still here.
There you go, okay. Pippa, so obviously you have been one of the UK's leading campaigners on trying to not only raise awareness of the biometrics and RFID agenda, but also trying to halt it. And, you know, you've had some considerable success over the last few years. So what's the current state of play?
So, biometric-wise, we've got this. Well, I mean, I guess for people who don't know how I have got to where I am now, I'll just give a very brief description. In 2004, my 2 children were 6 and 7, and I spotted a school fingerprint scanner in the library. And I said to the head teacher, "When are you going to ask for my permission?" And she just said, "I don't need your permission. I can take your kids' fingerprints without telling you about it and put it on a database, essentially." So I got in touch with the privacy organisations based in London, and myself and a handful of other parents lobbied Parliament until 2010, trying to get a change in the law. We got some questions asked in Parliament, and when the Conservative and Liberal Democrats got in, they passed a bill called the Protection Freedoms Act that got passed in 2012, and in Chapter 2 there is the clause that schools must ask for parents' permission before they fingerprint children. So coming from that sort of angle, I had alerts come through to my email on what was happening in the biometric industry and how it was being used with schools and in the industry as a whole. So I've sort of kept on this sort of track of surveillance and how the biometric industry has progressed. I always thought, even back then, that the biometric of choice for surveilling people would be facial recognition, because with things like a fingerprint scanner or an iris scanner or an infrared palm scanner, you as a human have to go up to the machine and interact with it so it can read your life measure, which is biometric, basically. But with face scanning, that's different. That can be done behind a surveillance camera, and it can be done without you knowing about it. So there's a select committee for the House of Commons have a Science and Technologies Committee, and in 2014 they had a discussion on the current and future uses of biometric technology. And when select committees have sort of topics of area they want to discuss, they open up to absolutely anybody to submit a paper. So I submitted a paper to the committee along with about 30 other people, and then the committee maybe gets 6 to 10 people in on a panel to interview and talk about and discuss the topic. And they did this, and the select committee got in Alistair McGregor, who is our biometrics commissioner at the moment. His remit covers DNA and fingerprints, and primarily is looking at the police database on that, and the retention of people's data that shouldn't be on there. So he sort of blew the lid on the fact that the police have been using facial recognition on the Police National Database since March that year. And the Home Office, who run the Police National Database, and ACPO, which was back then the Association of Chief Police Officers, had put submissions into this select committee inquiry into the current and future uses of biometric technology, and completely omitted the fact that they had been using facial recognition technology. So the Biometrics Commissioner sort of blew the whistle on that, I suppose, and there was a 20-minute Newsnight programme on it, which was actually quite good, and sort of it hit the papers, and so the Home Office had to resubmit their submission to the inquiry, stating that they were using facial recognition. The MPs were rightly across, I think is a fair description of the word to say, and they said, right, we need you to write a report for us, and as soon as possible, so we can see exactly what you're using it for, how you're using it. And so the Home Office said, yes, we'll give it to January 2015. And it's not happened yet, it's January 2016. So we've got two people who are asking questions in the House of one in the House of Lords, which is Lord Scriven, who's a Liberal Democrat peer from Sheffield, and the other one is Greg Mulholland, and he's a Liberal Democrat MP for Leeds. And I'm in touch with both of those loosely. I put pressure on Greg, especially to ask some questions in the House of Commons, which he did do in September. We got an answer back in October, which basically Greg asked 7 questions all about the spec of it, what it was being used for, what discussions had been going on with the public, etc., etc. And he just got one answer back from the Home Office, a generic answer that they answered for all 7 questions, which I'm just looking at the moment. And Lord Scriven has been very good. He keeps asking the Home Office, when are you going to deliver this report on facial recognition that you're using? And the Home Office said, well, in the last reply to his written question was, we'll have it to you, or we'll have it in the House of Commons Library December 2015, and it's not appeared. So that's something that both Lord Scriven and Greg Mulholland, I think, will probably address again in the coming months. But so we've got the Home Office using it on the Police National Database, which is a database of photographs from custody suite images taken from all the police forces in the UK. So the problem with that is, if you get arrested and you get taken to a police station, then the first things they do is take your DNA, fingerprint, and photograph. Then you may not get charged, or you might get charged and found innocent, but your data still remains on the Police National Database, your DNA, your fingerprints, and your photograph. So what they did at Leicestershire Police was, there was a recent download festival in June this year, and they were running a real-time facial recognition system behind CCTV cameras on a database of European custody suite photographs, identifying people that could potentially commit a crime, I guess, or identifying people that had been arrested or had committed crimes. I think the point that I strongly disagree with there's 2 points that I strongly disagree with using this technology is, what if it's wrong? What if that technology says that you're somewhere when you're not? And what if it identifies you incorrectly? I asked the Home Office under a Freedom of Information Act what the false positives were and the false negatives. So false positive, identifying somebody and it's not them. False negative is the machine hasn't picked up a correct, or what should have been essentially a correct identification. And the Home Office couldn't tell me. How can our government, how can the police force be using a facial recognition system they have no idea the accuracy of? It's ludicrous, which is why I'm going to be really interested to see this report, this fictional report that they're going to bring out, because presumably that sort of data will be in there, and they've told me they've not got it. So that would be a problem under the Freedom of Information Act, because they should have given it to me. But,
well, Pippa, sorry, yeah? we're fast running out of time, sadly.
That's good.
But it's I mean, if it wasn't for yourself and literally a handful of others being on this case, then we would be literally in the 100% surveilled society, and you have helped to effectively stem the rush into that agenda. And of course, I had a recent experience from my return from Amsterdam, where I was stopped by Special Branch. Now, it seems that Special Branch didn't necessarily know why it was that I was stopped, but they still pursued their line of questioning. So I'm just going to play out, and Pippa, we're going to have to continue this conversation. That's an absolute given, especially once you get your hands on one of those Richmond's tracking chips. But I'm just going to play out with the full version, which appeared only once on Russia Today, of the interview that I gave regarding my detention at Exeter Airport on Sunday, the 20th of December, under the auspices of the Terrorism Act. And Russia Today, despite Ruth Hayhurst's excellent article, Russia Today are the only media outlet that picked up on the story. So here's that interview.
An anti-fracking campaigner has revealed that he was detained at an airport under the Terrorism Act. Ian Crane was questioned for 2 hours at Exeter Airport just before Christmas. Documents reveal that his mobile phone was examined for approximately 1 hour, and he was told that he could have a friend informed of his detention at public expense, or rather a fried informed at public expense. So what is Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act? Well, it allows police, immigration and customs officers to detain and question people at ports or airports. On request, the person questioned must provide any information or documents, but there is no requirement for an officer to have a reasonable suspicion that someone is involved with terrorism before they are searched. People who fail to cooperate are deemed to have committed a criminal offence. Well, for more on this, I'm now joined by the man himself, Ian Crane, who presents the weekly web broadcast Fracking Nightmare. Ian, good evening. Thanks for joining us. So, are you a terrorist?
Well, I think I'm probably a long, long way removed from being a terrorist, but there's little doubt that David Cameron, despite his claims to never giving up on free speech, I think his interpretation of that is free speech is that as long as it's in line with his views and his philosophy. So I and many other anti-fracking campaigners are certainly regarded as domestic extremists, which is an absurdity.
So you think that is the reason why you're detained. So what exactly then did the security services say to you?
Well, I don't think they knew why they had stopped me. I got the distinct impression that they had been told to stop me. But during the course of the ensuing discussion, it certainly became clear to me that they didn't realise why they'd been told to stop me. So I don't know what story they'd been given, but
what sort of questions did they ask you, though? I mean, they must have had a line of questioning for you. Were you surprised what they were asking you?
Well, absolutely. I mean, obviously the obvious questions: where had I been? Where was I going? And I was, pretty non-cooperative because I told them right from the get-go they certainly did not have any reasonable cause to stop me. And of course, they advised me that under the Terrorism Act, they didn't need reasonable cause. They could stop me and detain me for up to 6 hours without having any cause whatsoever. So I did tell them, I said, guys, we are this far from being in a corporatist police state in the UK. And unfortunately, you guys, the special branch officers, are helping to facilitate that. And once we actually got talking about the issue of fracking and unconventional gas, I mean, their response was, well, we're all right down here in Devon and Cornwall, which, of course, is certainly not the case for the population in certain other areas of the country, particularly right across the north of England, where David Cameron and the Tory government have effectively unleashed environmental warfare on the population across the central belt of the north of England.
Right, well, you're accusing the government of the curtailment of freedom of speech, but is this actually the first incident of its kind where an activist such as yourself has actually been stopped for no reason at all and even charged under the Terrorist Act?
I doubt it very much. I'm sure that there have been other cases, and I know that Netpol, which is a body that monitors, police behaviour and monitors the police when they overstep the mark. And I'm pretty sure that Netpol have other examples of people suffering even greater levels of harassment. But, I'm very much in the frame. I know that, and our other...
Right, so just finally then, you're in the frame, you're a marked man, as it were. Will this have any impact at all on your future campaigning against fracking?
It just make me even more determined. And, my emphasis is to encourage people to do their own research and look for themselves. I never ask anyone to take anything I say at face value. do your own research and come to your own determination. And I can absolutely assure everybody that there is not a single member of the anti-fracking community that would deserve the label of being a terrorist.
Or not engage in any violent acts at all in terms of demonstrating?
Absolutely not. The whole ethos of the anti-fracking community, which covers all spectrum, or the full spectrum of the community, and the absolute ethos is that this is about non-violent, peaceful protest.
Ian Crane, thank you very much indeed for joining us live here on RT UK.